the Say Network podcast. I'm Jim Sparks alongside Abraham Guevara.
How's it going?
A little slow today, Abraham. Come on, man. Megan Villalpando.
Hey, guys.
She's on it. Today we sit down with Captain Keith Maynor.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, he's a little slow. Keith is currently the Croc Administrator in Camden, New Jersey. Beautiful Camden, New Jersey. His last appointment was the National Youth Secretary out of our national headquarters office. His office just completed, well, they kind of just completed, a large report on the status of youth ministry in the United States and the Salvation Army prior to his departure. In today's episode, we will dive into that report. It's very fascinating to me. I like data, so that made it even more fascinating. But before we get into the episode, we want to take a minute to talk about youth culture. And Megan, you're up.
There's an article, Jim. I think you may have sent it to us. We'll link it in the show notes. But it's about video gaming. It's really interesting, and it basically talks about how video games has kind of started to create community. There's a quote from this article, and I guess I should try to set it up a little bit, but I think basically I think this article came out back in like March or April, and Facebook was trying to say that they're trying to create a platform, and they may have launched it already. I need to check up on that, but they're trying to create a platform where they can kind of compete with Twitch and with, I forget the other one, Google Play or something. Abraham, you may know more on this than I do, but they wanted to create a platform that could compete with those different gaming platforms. And so they launched it, and I'm not sure how successful it's been or anything like that. But one thing that I really liked was a quote from the article. It says, and this comes from the head of the Facebook app, the gaming app. It says, investing in gaming in general has become a priority for us. We see gaming as a form of entertainment that really connects people. And I think that's so cool, because I think when gaming initially came out, it was looked at as kind of like just an isolating, almost divisive thing early on. Parents were concerned about their kids spending so much time on these games, concerned about like deteriorating social skills and all this kind of stuff. But as we've seen over time, it's actually the exact opposite. It's developed into the exact opposite. It's now a place where people are finding community, people are finding connection, they're finding belonging in their friends groups on Twitch or on these different gaming platforms. And I just love stories where something was like bad, and then particularly in the Bible, I just love that when God comes in or Jesus comes in and he redeems a space, something is a situation, a space, a person, whatever is just bad, awful, and then he comes and redeems it and makes it something good. I'm not saying this is a direct comparison with the video games, but I do like that it started off as something kind of people were concerned about, and it's developed into something really great, which is pretty cool. So I'm just curious, what do you guys think about that? Just the growth of gaming platforms and people finding community on these platforms. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's easy to find community where community is being welcoming. Like there's something for everyone, ultimately. And yes, gaming has evolved over the years from my early days of Atari 2600 and even earlier than that, which didn't rot our brains, turns out. And but maybe in Abraham's generation, it did start to rot brains with salacious games like Mario and Excitebike and Donkey Kong. But no, I think gaming really changed with Doom as far as negative, just outright negative things. And that was mostly because it was a violent killing game that we had not seen before. Contra was probably one of the more violent games before that. It was guys just fell out of the screen when they died. There was nothing more to it than that. But gaming has evolved as well, because there was a lot of a long run of those Doom-like games, but now so much of the gaming is cooperative focus, where you're playing in groups, and you need groups in order to do that. So I do think that helps with the community. Obviously, having the internet where you could be able to not be at the same house and be able to be parts of those groups, that changes the game quite a bit. But I don't know, from my perspective, a lot of the gaming has turned cooperative, turned into group efforts, and so I think that does help the community, and I think that's a good thing.
The good old days of sitting next to your friends is kind of gone a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, to be able to like hold your cartridge up to your friend to have them blow in it, like those are special times.
Those are
these
good
kids,
old days,
these
man.
kids don't know what that feels like, to have your friend's saliva just drip on your wrist while you're about to play.
One of my favorite things, like Nintendo for me has been one of my favorite companies in regards to creating, making gaming more of a party, more of a social kind of experience. Like the Wii, when the Wii came out, the Wii was everywhere. It was like at every youth event, it was big projectors, because it was creating this, come together, let's play a game together, let's make fun of each other, let's pretend like we're actually good at sports that we're terrible at in real life. And like, I do feel like a little bit of that is lost, maybe because of what, things that are going on now. But you can get close to that, I think, with online gaming. You can get pretty close to that. You can get close to that when you create a team, when you jump on a Fortnite team, or you jump on an Apex team, or Call of Duty, or anything like that. I think that you can kind of get back to that a little bit. Also, I've noticed that there's a couple games coming out. I don't remember the name of the game off the top of my head, but it's a free game on the PS4, and the game is essentially anybody who doesn't know how to play, just jump in and start playing. And the game is this character running around, bumping into a bunch of stuff, and it's just a wild, wacky game. And I've noticed that gaming companies are starting to take notice of this appeal to non-gamers, so they're trying to make things very simple for you to jump in. And so you don't have to be like an expert. You don't have to be like the best at it. And I think that they're really taking note, because, I mean, they're trying to make money, obviously. But there's a need, I think, in the community and people just to want to have fun and have fun together with people, and especially now. And so they're trying to make, I think the buy-in isn't as much now. The game, there's free games. Like, if you had told me that there was going to be a time when games were going to be free, you can just download a free game and have the time of your life with amazing graphics and all that stuff, I would have thought you were lying to me if you had told me this 10 years ago. But like, I guess with maybe like the beginning with Minecraft, and then from then on, the games like Fortnite, they're free, right? They don't cost you anything. The buy-in is nothing to jump in and start playing these games. And I think that's awesome. And I think there's a revenue in there for these companies. They know that there's something there, and I don't know. It's kind of a golden age, I think, for gaming. People always say that, right? But I think right now it's pretty great. And also, it's the competition for Twitch, I think, is YouTube, just YouTube streaming.
You're right. Yeah. After I said that, I went back and checked. It is YouTube.
Yeah, it's just YouTube streaming, and I think I have friends who do streaming and do all that stuff, and they, when they first started it out, it was you had to do it on Twitch, and then you would upload it to YouTube and to Facebook. And now those two companies are like, just do it on our platform. They're trying to kind of undercut Twitch, I think, a little bit, because Twitch blew up into something that what was it like when we were at Long Beach? We saw Twitch conference. We all knew about Twitch, but it was sort of like, we saw all those people there, like, what is it? Why, it's like something that's happening that you're not aware of. It's like an underground culture, basically. That was, I think, at that point was starting to sprout forward and really, really just go nuts. But yeah, man, that thing took off. I thought it was insane. It was the one thing I hated. The one thing me and Jim would complain about is how when you were a kid and your like older sibling would play or your older cousin would play, and you would have to watch them. And Twitch was like, hey, watch us play. And I'm like, why would I want to watch you play a video game? I want to play, But it turned into something big.
That's been the biggest adjustment for me is like the idea of sitting and watching someone play video games seems so stupid to me. Like I've not been able to adjust that. I'm like, why? I want to play myself. I don't want to watch somebody else play. Like the obviously some of the largest YouTube channels are just watching people play games. It's like, no, man. I remember leaving my friend Eric's house several times because he's like, "Oh no, you got like 6 more turns before it's your time to play." I'm like, "All right, see ya. I'm not hanging out here. I'm not watching you guys do Sonic the Hedgehog. Forget that."
Or what I do to my kids now when I give them the controller that doesn't work,
Right.
and just say, "Hey, just."
Keith, you did you do much looking into with gaming? I know they popped up on the youth report.
Yes, yes, we looked a lot into gaming. And part of that is I'm a former gamer. We talk about investing hours upon hours with kids playing video games this year. I probably have 20,000 hours of video gaming under my belt before I was 18 years old. So this is, so I immediately thought this could be a pretty cool topic for youth ministry. And so we came in with the youth report, not trying to prompt this, but this is something that all the youth secretaries said on their own initiation, that gaming is huge. So to kind of put it in perspective, you can go to a typical community and you're going to find a handful of kids that are playing soccer. You're going to find another handful that are playing basketball or football. Now, how the games work and just how Little League and all the Pee Wee sports evolve, you're not going to really see a lot of crossover when a kid gets to the 7th or 8th grade. They kind of have their career path, at least athletically. But the thing is with video gaming, it's the pure universal crossover. You're finding this with kids that whether you play soccer, baseball, whether you're into music, it's ubiquitous. You have kids that are playing on their consoles or they're playing on a mobile phone. Every kid between the ages of 7 to 18 in the country right now have some kind of interface with a video game. And this just isn't boys. This is a growing trend, even with girls. Girls are huge into things like Mario Kart, the Nintendo platforms now, with from the Wii going into, gosh, what iteration are we into now? Switch of Nintendo. This is going to be baseball for the next 100 years. So the one thing that really caught our interest in why we wanted to tackle this in the National Youth Report is you have weak signals all around. Now, Jim, you mentioned this with the audience that's building, with the TV audience is watching esports on networks like TBS. You have a huge following on all the social media platforms, Twitch, YouTube. The esports community, they have been in conversations with the Olympic Committee, right? This is going to evolve into an Olympic sport, maybe not be for 2024. Eventually, it is going to be there. And when that happens, esports, this is going to be dominating youth culture for the next 100 years and probably beyond. So some of the things that we discovered is that every single divisional youth secretary is aware of kids and a local pocket at a core in the bigger region within their division where the gaming culture has taken root, where it's a weekly activity with individuals. You have some clusters of cores where video gaming is happening, sometimes with a youth group. It can be a little sporadic. Now, the sporadic nature of that, we're going to have to pull another conversation about how the Salvation Army culture interfaces with the advent of gaming. I think that's something that we really should explore in our conversation now. But yeah, gaming it's something that we can't assume. It's something that we can't take for granted. It's something that if we can tap into this as a key component of our youth engagement strategy, this could be a saving element for a future generation of salvation. So it's something we have to take so seriously, and it's an opportunity we just can't let it pass by. Because I can tell you right now, on a denominational level, there's probably some conversation that's going around if you look at other churches, but with what you guys are looking at, what's happening in the Central Territory with what they want to do with gaming, we have an opportunity to really be the front runners and push a new frontier with this in youth work. So whatever we could do to support and get behind the work that you guys are doing, the conversations that you're forcing, we have to do it, and do it with great urgency and expediency.
You might have saw Abraham and I laugh because Megan, favorite game?
Definitely the Mario Kart.
There it is.
Yeah. On the app.
Keith, what's your go-to game that you feel confident that you could be a front runner in?
Listen, Jim, I played the beta of Counter-Strike when that was on a PC. So
wow.
I've been, I had some game.
Okay.
I got to talk myself up. I'm pretty confident. I could jump on like a Call of Duty, the Halo. I have not embarked into Fortnite yet, but I'm pretty sure I could back my game up. Actually, let me tell you, I played Fortnite one time on the mobile version, and just to give you a heads up, so it was like I was in there, the newbie with like, I think you start with the silly pickaxe. So I found a wall inside a little convenience store, and I'm pickaxing the corner of the wall, like seeing how many guys I could come, like kind of gathered, like look at the noob, look at him go. And then all of a sudden I just went like Jack Nicholson on all these guys with my pickaxe and killed the guy when they just least expected it. That's my run with Fortnite. So I think I could be okay. I can hold my own with any like first person shooter.
So tell us about the report. Why did you guys do the report?
So yeah, the report really has the backstory. It was really birthed from the National Youth Commission, which is basically, it's a group of all the territorial youth secretaries. So you have to rewind the clock about two and a half years ago. We were doing an event where we brought in every divisional youth secretary across the country for a week-long retreat, a training conference called National Divisional Youth Leaders Conference. So we were going to be holding that in St. Louis. So we thought that in order to maximize the time when we get together with a group of 40 different DYs, we really should have an agenda. We should really understand the state of a union of youth ministry across the country, because we didn't know what we should dive into of what topics the DYs were wrestling with, where the state of programming was. So we wanted to have a really big picture this is a gut check of where we are with our youth ministry. So the report was birthed out of that. So basically the nuts and bolts behind the document, it's a battery of 20 questions that we went through with 36 of the divisional youth secretaries across the country. There's a few that we've missed. It took roughly about 9 months to complete this with interviews. So we asked things that were specific to the divisional youth secretary, about their officership, about the things that they're experiencing as their ministry and leading youth ministry in the division. We ask questions about what are they seeing with the corps and the state of their youth ministry, with youth groups, with everything from junior soldiers to Sunday school to Corps cadets. We wanted to really sink our teeth into what are kids experiencing when they come to the Salvation Army, and what are they celebrating in the Army, and what are they proud of the Army, that this is their church. And we also ask questions that were a little more strategically based. We want to know about the systems, about what they're encountering, about the life of a division. So we were looking at lots of different angles to try and understand what youth ministry is and where we're at. Now, Jim, Abraham, and Megan, we also wanted to ask some mathematical questions, like how many kids are coming to the Army. We wanted to do a little bit of a census, that on the other end of this, that we could say definitively, we know that there were, in the ages between 10 to 12, that we have this number of boys, we have this number of girls between the ages of 13 to 15. And we try to do a census, and I hate to say, we were not successful in capturing that to a scientific certainty. We have some estimates. That was another big idea behind the survey and behind the research. So what we do feel that we've captured is a very in-depth report on the Army Youth Ministry from the eyes of a divisional youth secretary. And we feel that we feel very strong and very confident about what we were able to capture. So the idea of the report is that now this report kind of resides in the hands of the territorial youth secretary. it also belongs to the new National Youth Secretary, which is Captain Matt Satterley, to kind of use this information and really just drip all the utility that they can get from it to make good decisions, to recommend good policy to our Salvation Army leaders on how we can position youth ministry and help us move forward to get kids saved, to get kids sanctified, and really ensure the future of the Army through the next generation.
Keith, when I read this report, there were a couple surprises in there, but I think one thing that surprised me the most was that the biggest drop off that we had in attendance, and again, you said this is from the DY Divisional Youth Secretary, Divisional Youth Leader perspective, but it wasn't actually young adults, which I think for a long time it was, and there still is a drop off there. But the biggest drop off was from that transition from elementary school into middle school, and I thought that was really key. Did that surprise you? And was there anything else that surprised you while doing this report?
Absolutely. So the numbers that we could verify it was something where, and this is indicative of every church, every denomination in youth ministry in North America, right? For the last 20 years, we've constantly heard the rhetoric, whether you go to youth specialties or any kind of like youth group focused conference. It's been hammering, sounding the alarm on young adult ministry, right? We're losing our young adults. They go to college and then they get indoctrinated with the secular worldview. We got to stop this, right? We've been hearing that. And now what this report does, it validates that perspective, because certainly, yes, we are losing young adults. That is true. But we have to go think of youth ministry as a greater pipeline, where we need to transition kids from birth all the way through their adulthood, and that's all part of their discipleship journey. Yeah, the report was an eye-opener when we looked at the middle school. So what we could verify with the divisions that could report, that we could count at least 6,000 kids in elementary schools across the divisions. Now, the reporting measure on that was 13 out of 38 divisions at the time. Now, when they enter from elementary school to 6,000, that number drops to 2,500 when they get to middle school. So some would argue, say, well, that's just the aggregation of all the elementary school. When they get to middle school, of course, you're going to have a drop. The difference is that when you look at the pipeline, that it's still a 54% drop, right? When you're looking at that number, it really should not be that kind of level. We need to have a stronger retention rate. Now, if we fix the middle school drop-off, if we fix that cliff, that helps position us for young adult ministry, for high school ministry in the future. So when we think about, we want to solve young adults, really the solution to that is we got to back up. And actually, if we focus now on middle school, it's going to give us a better retention, that we're going to have more high schoolers. And that fixes the pipeline, further down the road. So it is really important. It's really critical. When you look at Salvation Army programming across the board, from Sunday school, Corps cadets, junior soldiers, programmatically, we do have a little bit of a gap with our program. So there's things that maybe we need to think about with high school youth group. Maybe we need to think more about, maybe it's middle school youth group that we have to concentrate. So there's going to be solutions. Of course, it's always going to be contextualized to where that core is, where the division is, where the region is, to find the appropriate solution for how they're fighting against their own middle school cliff. But yeah, thank you, Megan, for bringing that up. It is probably one of the single most important findings of the report.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And that kind of corroborates like other research I've read, like from Fuller Youth Institute, their sticky faith material. The approach has to start early. It's not, we can't just address it right, like young adult ministry, right at young adult ministry. It does start back earlier, and a lot of the other research confirms that as well. So I think that's really interesting.
It's almost like you start losing your young adults in junior high.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that jumped out to you? Can you think of like 3 things that jumped out to you that require immediate action, things that need to be dealt with, that are like, hey, we got to get on this right away?
Yeah, we have a ton of findings through the report. The gaming opportunity was a huge finding. when we looked at our program portfolio. So what I mean is all the programs that we do, from music to character building, all those things that we do, we're doing some amazing programming. There's a couple things that we have to be mindful of with that. And some of this, it comes back to how we communicate to kids in the division. It comes back to how we prioritize things on the divisional calendar, how we reward kids with incentives, with some of the rewards of how we just kind of do our ministry through the years. One thing I think is really important is when we look at the music programs in the Salvation Army, and I say this as that this is primarily a strength. I'm not knocking this in any way, so I want to be very clear on this. We have fantastic musicians. We have a fantastic music training program where you could go to any corner around the country in the Salvation Army, and you're gonna encounter world-class musicians, world-class brass players, world-class singers, and they're doing a phenomenal job with training. A number of the DYs, and this is from corner to corner of every territory, would say in some pockets in the Army, the music, the kids that are embraced in the music, that participate in the music, sometimes will get preferential treatment. Now, and so what that happens with a kid that's not engaged in like a divisional music program, or they're not engaged in learning a brass instrument, they can almost feel like they're second-class Salvationists in the Salvation Army. Sometimes they can show up to a corps, and there may not even be an adult that will say hello to them, that will welcome them. They won't get a sense of feeling that they belong and that they're cared for. Now, to me, that is a travesty in the Salvation Army. Every kid that comes through our door should be welcomed. They should be greeted. And every Sunday, whether they come on a Sunday or through the weekday, someone needs to tell them, hey, I'm so happy you're here. We love you. Thank you so much for coming. You're a great kid. They need that kind of encouragement. Any kid that comes across the door, they have to feel encouragement and be plugged in to a sense that they belong here, they love here. And by all means, we have to continue to leverage that strength of music. But at the same time, we have to be mindful and go out of our way to make sure every single kid is welcomed and appreciated and cared for and loved for no matter what Salvation Army they come to. So that was that's a concern. It's something that we can enhance and keep moving forward. At the same time, the music programs they're just like video gaming. We have so much opportunity because that is such a tremendous strength that we have, and a unique place that we could leverage, especially in the context where there's so many music programs in the public school system that are under threat for being cut from budgets. It's a place where we can definitely stand in the gap and offer a really valuable program and get kids involved through the Army through music. So that was one. I could go on. I don't want to be a fire hose of information on you guys, but do you want to hear a couple more? Do you have another question before I?
Yeah, let's hear another one. We heard because we did talk about gaming, and that is a big opportunity. So yeah, why don't you share another one?
Yeah, another one, and I think that this shouldn't come to any surprise to you guys on the call, or maybe a couple of your listeners. We asked specific questions, and we wanted to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about a kid's experience with the Salvation Army. So one of the things that we were very interested in is what are things like obstacles, barriers that are keeping kids out of the Salvation Army. So the finding on the report is that we discovered a cultural barrier in our youth ministry. So we would ask the question in our survey instrument, what keeps kids out? And we were able to split answers to that question into an external bucket or an internal bucket. All right. So an external barrier are things that are outside of the core that keep a kid coming in. So 30% of the questions revolved around that. So for case in point, what keeps a kid out of the Salvation Army, out of our programming, out of our ministry? About 8% of the DYs responded, well, it's sports. The kids are going to soccer, they have football practice, they have cheerleading. Other things that they say, there's transportation issues. They just don't have a ride. The cores are not doing pickups. There's no vast bus ministry like there used to be. Other times they'll say they're just too busy with schedules and it just can't come back. So that was 30% of the answers revolved around that there's just some external barrier. Now, sadly, most of the answers to this question of barriers, they were about internal things that revolved around inside the Salvation Army. So these are things that are inside our sphere of influence, things that we could control that were a part of the personality, the fellowship of the core, the programming, and some of these things are organizationally based. So here's an example, is that 10% of the DY said the programming of what we're doing, it's either irrelevant, meaning that it's just it just doesn't have any interest to the kids. Another group of the DY said the programming is ineffective. Others were saying that the quality of the local leadership that were running the youth ministries, they just seem not to care enough about the kids. There was inconsistency with the program delivery. Others have talked about the style of worship. Others have talked about there's a sense of the salvationist culture of how we speak, how we value a certain behavior when kids come. We're all part of the big barriers that were keeping kids out. So there's things in there that with Salvation Army culture that we need to celebrate, that things that we need to hang on, because that's core to our identity, that's core to our mission. And there's other things with our culture and with what's happening on the inside. We just maybe the solution is we just have to have a conversation about this, to think about how can we be welcoming to a kid that may not have any familiarity with any church. And we were a unique church on top of just that topic and subject of church in general. What are some things that we could be sensitive about? So that was another, I think, another important finding. What do you guys think? Are you buying what I'm selling? Is this stuff that all just resonates? Things that were already on kind of your conversation level and your agenda?
I think a lot of that stuff was kind of experiential as well. I think a lot of people can relate to some of the things that you see in the studies. The external barriers have never really been the main issue, I think. Growing up and doing youth ministry at the core and everything, it was always like, how are we connecting? Are we letting people come into our event or whatever and then not connecting with them after? Or it was always a lot of the pressure was felt, I think, on the youth minister and in that sense, because a lot of parents are very willing to have you take their kids, like, here, take them, But yeah, I think that report is very shocking. I'm interested to hear people's feelings as well. Like when the youth workers hear this, kind of like, what are your feelings on this? What are your thoughts?
I think also it's interesting because it kind of shows that it's the effort can't just come from the youth minister, the youth volunteer, the youth leader. It's a whole church effort, to
Yes.
welcome people and to bring people in and help people feel like this is a place where you can belong.
Absolutely, yes.
I would say that you'd probably find a similar outcome if you measured it for adults as well. It's probably very similar experiences. I think we discount adults because we feel like that they're just in there and it's going to be fine. But I would suspect that it would be very similar for adults and how they feel about being part of the congregation and being part of programs as well. And that makes a big difference too. I mean, that's doubling down when the adults are not comfortable or feel wanted there, because they do have kids part of that, and ultimately if they're leaving, then the kids are leaving as well.
Yeah absolutely.
Keith, we'll finish with this last question, and you kind of touched on this throughout the podcast, but what does the future of youth ministry in the Salvation Army look like to you?
I think that ministry is going to have to look more local. It's going to have to be more contextualized. So it's going to the local core have to adapt to in their local setting. I think traditionally, and let me explain this question because this is going to get dicey for me, and hopefully you're not going to get me in trouble later on with this. Traditionally, the Salvation Army, we measured our youth ministry by the quality of a program, right?
Yeah.
So we would ask the question, what is happening with the Junior Soldier program? What is happening with the Corps Cadet program? What is happening with the Sunday School program? And by what they really mean with that is, what's the attendance? What's the number, the quantifiable number of participation in these programs? The shift, and I think the future of Salvation Army ministry is, we're not throwing the program out. We have to emphasize the person. We have to emphasize the individual kid, that it's not the program that has to take first place. It's the pipeline. It's the number of kids. It's going to be, how is Zach doing in the Corps? How is Sarah? How is Hakeem? How is Aaliyah? How are the kids doing, not the program? And I think that if we can make that shift, put the kids first, not the program, that's going to make a tremendous difference. So what that does on the front end for the local YPSM, the local officer, we have to be able to contextualize. Now, I say this as someone that I've invested 6 years of my life into Corps Cadets. I've poured my soul, I put heart, sweat, and tears into Corps Cadets, and I love it. I believe in it, and I believe it as a program. It could make it a profound difference in disciplining, discipling, maybe it get some discipline.
We get that. We literally get that all the time.
Yeah, with creating a better disciple of Jesus that loves Jesus more. Corps Cadets is not a fit for every kid across the country. Now, I'm saying that we've got to do Corps Cadets when that makes sense, when it's going to be a contextual, strategic move on the local level. If it's not the strategic move there, we've got to figure out, how do we disciple the kid? How do we put the kid's priority? The program is a means. It's not the end. It's always going to be the kid that has to be the end, and the relationship and their unique following, because they're following a unique calling of Jesus in their life. We've got to be the instrument to help that, and that's got to be the mission. That's got to be our vision.
Well said, Keith. And the last part we do on our podcast is we give you a chance to address our listeners directly for 2 minutes, which you kind of have. but this gives you an opportunity to address a little bit more. If you could leave a direct message in the inbox of each of our listeners, what would you like to tell them?
Like to tell them, well, Jesus loves you. You guys are terrific. Thank you for your investment, for your courage of doing ministry in the Salvation Army, that you have a unique calling on your life. You have a unique purpose. And I'm thankful to you for your longing to please God, to be approved as a workman for Jesus. So I'd encourage you to persevere. When you face trial, when you face problems, encounter that with joy. Encounter that, because that's Jesus working his life, his faith, because he's the author, he's the finisher of our faith. So God bless you, and keep going and keep persevering.
Hey, thanks, Keith. And Keith, we appreciate it. And this report, I think, is it might even be more significant than you think it is, because you worked on it, and you're like any major report or thing, you probably get tired of it at the end of it, and you're like, okay, I'm tired of seeing it. But I do think it's significant, and I know that you're not in that role anymore, but the report is still going to be very much talked about for years to come, and stuff to digest, because there's so many different things in there to kind of work through, and to do follow up on too. That's going to be key. Reports are only good if they're being followed up on. So we appreciate that.
I'm going to give my successor, Matt Satterley, a big shout out. He's going to be the shepherd and the steward of the report. And I know that reports, they can't be point of time. They got to be they have to continue into the future. So I know Matt is going to do a great and terrific job as the youth secretary. And I'm sure he's going to do a wonderful job being a servant and a supporter to you guys in your work at the territorial level of youth ministry too.
Thank you, Keith, and Camden is very lucky to have you and Pam there, and your wonderful 3 kids. And
thank you.
We're praying for your transition. It's tough, and for any transition, but it's especially tough during COVID times where things are just out of whack altogether. So you guys and all officers that have had to transition are definitely in our prayers. Anything we've talked about in this episode will be linked. We will get this linked, this youth report linked. Right now it's not technically public, but kind of public, partially public. But by the time this episode comes out, we'll get that public out to you. I will make that bold statement right now. And and don't forget to subscribe to the State Network podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. We're on YouTube as well. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with another brand new episode because we don't repeat episodes. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Abraham. Take care, everybody.